reception at those then?
No, that's fine. That works. So just wire yourself in the phone. So I guess I asked everyone how they became introduced to foreign films. You can start talking off the top of your head.
I don't remember how I got introduced to foreign films. It's been a long time. I've been going to the festival since the first year. So it's been a long, long time.
So did you help start the festival up, or how did you choose the festival to?
I saw the original press release in the Seattle Times 20-some years ago. They had about 2 paragraphs, maybe 3 paragraphs, saying that there was going to be a new first ever Seattle International Film Festival. They were bringing, I can't remember, was it 10 films the first year?
Yeah, I think Jeff was saying there weren't too many films.
I've got the program if you want to take a look.
No, that's okay. So what basically happened the first year? I heard it was like a 1-week program, and it was...
Something like that. I only went to 1 or 2 films the first year. Picked up a few more films the second, third, fourth year, and went to quite a few films. Some years there were a couple of festivals, the early 80s, where I was just busy and didn't get to anything.
So when did you start getting really fanatic about going to see the 50 or 60 plus films, or even more than that?
Well, I'm not sure that's fanatic. Like a lot of people, I started buying cinematic 6-packs, which used to be a great deal when they were $18 for 6 movies. It's gone up since then, but I was buying 5 or 6 or 7 cinematic 6-packs and getting up close to the price of buying a full series pass, and eventually just did that.
So what else? Well, if we can start talking, what else? Anything you remember from the early festivals? Any hijinks?
Early festivals and hijinks. Yeah. Sure, it used to be fun. Prince would show up, missing reels. One of my festival memories I'll never forget is about 12:10 in the morning at the old Egyptian Theater, actually the old Moore Theater down on 2nd Avenue, when the lights came up as they did the last reel change on a film called Mariken, a Dutch film, which has never come back to Seattle. About 20 years later, I still haven't seen the last reel of Mariken, and the only festival staffer who was still in the theater at that hour came walking down the creaky old aisle of the Moore saying, "Sorry folks, it got held up in customs, and we've been on the phone frantically trying to find it since we realized that it wasn't there." But they just ran the thing out to the last reel and brought up the lights.
Did they explain what happened afterwards, or no one knew what happened afterwards? Or?
Got held up in customs, never made it.
Oh. Were there any cases where they mix up the reels? Or
Well, about 5 years ago, there was an Indian film which was the last film before the closing night ceremonies at the Egyptian. And the film was pretty unintelligible. No one really wanted to see it that we could tell, but there were people who were trying to stake out seats for the prime show, the 7 o'clock on Sunday night there at the Egyptian. So a lot of us suffered through it, and it was more unintelligible than it was intended to be, because they couldn't figure out the reel order and they just kept throwing them in at random. So you'd see characters die and then they'd come back a couple of reels later, and it didn't make any sense, but I'm not sure it would have if the reels had been in the right order. There have been other mishaps like that. There have been foreign films which show up with subtitles, but the subtitles are in Danish.
What do they do in that case?
Well, folks, we hope you enjoy this. If you want a refund, we'll be happy to refund your money, but this is the film we've got.
I think Jeff was talking about a film that was in Siberian or something, that someone actually stood there and translated during the film. I don't remember that.
There have been a few of those. There was also a film, I think 2 years ago, in which the last reel again didn't show up, and someone who'd seen it at a different festival just stood up on stage and tried to describe what had happened in the last reel to resolve the film.
That's interesting. So how did the business of all the buttons start when you, because I know the last couple of festivals.
Well, you have to talk to Steve about buttons. Steve started doing buttons a long time ago, and he has a button maker. Steve was doing the design work by hand, manually, and I started giving him some help doing computer layout for button patterns. And the last couple of years, I've been doing the button designs, or most of the button designs. So we do the designs, we do the production work of getting the buttons printed up in blanks, trimming them out, getting them into the button machine with the parts, and cranking them out.
So how do you come up with your designs? You just look at the internet?
Oh, I just try to think of something. If there is artwork for the festival out ahead of time, I'll try to grab that and see if there's something interesting to use there. Some of this last year's buttons included reworks of the face that was on the cover of the program, doing lots of different things with that face. Others, like the 3D audience wearing 3D glasses in mirror images, one red on the left and one blue on the right, looking towards each other with other images, are just things that I invent.
Do you have any memories of audiences' reactions to certain films? Like, I think Jeff told me about the lesbian reaction to one of the films.
There's been everything through the years. There have been occasions in the early years at the Moore which had some small sort of opera boxes along the side of the theater where, for some special interest films, there were people hanging off the ledges and, scrambling up the walls and hooting and hollering and shouting. You get some tremendous audience reaction films, though, like The Kingdom a couple of years ago, where people had sat there for 5.5 hours and the lights came on at the end and people just unanimously just stood up and cheered at about 1:30 in the morning for the film they'd been watching for nearly 6 hours. Other things like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, were real surprises, but just swept the audience along. You had huge audience reaction. You also have the reverse of that, where you have people walking out in droves, and that happens once in a while.
And I guess I'm curious about the old venues that they no longer have the festival at. Do you remember any of the old venues that they showed films at?
Well, the Moore was a lot of fun. The Moore was built back just after the turn of the century. It was originally a legitimate theater house, and you had old Seattle and old world-class actors playing there, doing legitimate theater in the Moore stage. That was an available theater at the time Daryl and Dan came to Seattle and were looking for a place to start up. It had been dark for quite some time, and they were able to go in there. They did a lot of work cleaning it up, mucking it out. They found a lot of garbage throughout. The restrooms were downstairs in the basement, and they did a lot of work cleaning that place up, painting it, and putting in the Egyptian motif. The other theater that was used for a couple of years, that was a lot of fun, was the Market, which I believe is no longer lit now. I think it's dark again, but it's been alive a couple of times over the last 15 or so years. Very small theater, only seating about 150 or so, and nothing is more than about 8 rows back, and a very intimate location, which was fun for a number of things. Among my memories there, in the 10th festival, there was a tribute to director Erich von Stroheim, and they showed, I think, 6 restored von Stroheims. They took the best available elements, had crisp mint prints, and showed those there. And film scholar and friend of the festival from New York, a professor at NYU, came and talked about the films and what was going on with von Stroheim, and that was a great series to see there. So
how has the festival changed in the last 20 years, aside from the prices going up and I guess the crowds? I don't know if you have any opinion on that. Or the movies they show.
The movies have changed quite a bit. The atmosphere has too. Originally it was a 2-man operation. It was Daryl and Dan, and that was it. And they had assistants. They brought on a third person, Rajiv Gupta, who had been a programmer as well as a film student at University of Washington. And for several years in the mid-late 1970s, he booked the Associated Students of University of Washington film series, which showed Friday and Saturday nights in Kane Hall, and did some really good booking. and was very knowledgeable about what he was doing. And it was Rajiv who came walking down the Moore aisle at 12:10 in the morning to tell us that the last reel of Marican wasn't there. Rajiv did a really tremendous job of booking, and he had some of the most adventurous and diverse series going in some of those mid-years. Rajiv left the festival many, many years ago, and he passed away a number of years ago.
Yeah, because Jeff was talking about people that have passed away. Like he said, did you know David Bumbar? He said that he passed away a couple of years ago.
Not by last name, but there was a David who passed away a couple of years ago. It's probably the same one.
Yeah.
There are people who know certain people and people who don't know other people, and it's quite amazing. You have all of these people going to the festival, and many of us see each other for 4 or 5, 6 weeks, depending on whether or not you go to the press screenings, and you don't see each other the rest of the year. And that was where the Full Serious Guide to Familiar Faces came from.
So how did you guys put together that guide? You guys just looked at all your photographs and who reoccurred?
Well, Steve and I were always talking about so-and-so did this, did that, said that, saw whatever film, as you were talking about David. And we were never sure we were talking about the same person. Well, it was David with light brown hair. Well, it was David who's about so tall. And we were having a hard time trying to describe people to each other, and realized that there were lots of folks that we knew by face, but not by name. So I pushed Steve to go through some of his photos, and was originally thinking maybe we'd come up with about 100 and do, 8.5 by 14 or something. Well, as we went through photos and more photos and more photos, we kept finding more and more faces. The people who were there year after year after year after year, or who used to be there. People like Rajiv, who aren't around anymore, but people still talk about and want to know who that person was. They recognize the face, but not the name. So we went back through 5 years of Steve's photos, and also got photos from a couple of other people. Larry and his and Steve's were the only ones in the first edition. And we identified who we could by first name. And then we had pages and pages of faces that we didn't know what their name was, but we knew we saw them all the time. And I was taking those to the press screenings and grabbing everyone I knew and going, okay, who do you know? Whose name do we not have here? And it was very interesting. You had every person who went to the festival knew 20, 30, 40 people that they would talk to. And they knew the names of about half those people. And they were too embarrassed to ask what someone's name was because they knew the year before, or they'd known at one time. They were just too embarrassed to ask, hi, what's your name? I've forgotten. And so it was a matter of just piecing in 1 name, 2 names, 3 names at a time, and putting it together so that eventually we wound up with 183 names and faces put together, and that became the first Full Serious Guide to Familiar Faces. And as a result of that, people started talking to each other more, which was a great side benefit, and people knew each other's names, and it encouraged more camaraderie amongst the full series folks.
Any plans to put together a future edition?
Yeah, either for the 24th or the 25th, we're gathering more photos. There are people who weren't in the first edition because we simply didn't have any photo images. There is at least one fellow I can think of who has been around since the first festival, and we couldn't find a single photo of him. Other folks who are around and see 80, 90, 100 films a year. And in one instance, I know we found one dark, unusable half profile of this woman. There are lots of folks who just have never shown up in the photos because the photos were not taken with this in mind. They were just headshots cropped out of group shots, usually, that were taken around the festival over the years. So there will be a future edition. There were a few people who didn't want to be in the first edition and weren't. There were lots of people who wanted to be in who weren't, but we didn't have photos. And we've invited people who'd like to be in to provide their own photo or let us know, and we'll shoot something and see about getting them into another edition. The arrangement on the first edition was the only way you got one was if you were in.
That's smart. You're such a methodical thing with photographs. Do you do the same things with selecting the films that you go to? Because there's so many films in the festival. How do you select what to see?
That's a challenge for everyone. Everyone has a different strategy for how they're going to go about doing that. There are the folks who are going to see 20 films, and they're very, very careful about slotting what those 20 films are going to be and picking out their route of what they're going to go see. Then there are the people who just want to see the maximum number of films. They don't care so much what they see. They're just going to see the most possible films. And they'll try to schedule things out so that they don't leave themselves any slots where they've seen everything that's going to show that slot. So they'll go see something that they might not be particularly interested in other times. Personally, I've done a number of things. When I was doing multiple cinematic six-packs, I needed to obviously pick out which particular films I was going to go see. So I would go through the first available guide to the films and color code things, and then go back again and recolor code which things I had to see, which things I wanted to see, which things were sort of marginal, and then I'd build that together to see what I could try to get to. With the full series pass, it's a little easier because you don't have to buy the tickets ahead of time. And it gives you more flexibility with the ability to go to the press screenings when the press screenings have been open to us. There have been years when they have not been open to us. And what I usually try to do is work it around my personal schedule and see as much as I can of the things that I want to see. And we'll try to go to 3, 4, 5 films a day throughout the festival.
So why? Why do you see all those, see as many movies as you do? Is it like collecting, or is it like a mania?
Well, the films work on a number of levels. You have the straight entertainment level. There are a lot of wonderfully entertaining films. You have an art level where you have really creative cinematic things going on that you don't see in your typical big budget production that gets a release. You also have to understand that the bulk of the films that show in the festival will never, ever come back to Seattle, and you will never, ever have a chance to see those films again. If you miss those films at the film festival, that was it. You'll never have another chance to see those films. So it's good to see what you can, see the filmmaking that occurs in different countries around the world and see what different filmmakers are doing. And it also gives you a chance to see works in progress and to get an advanced look at things which may not be released for 2 or 3 years, or see very good films which, just for one reason or another, never get an American release. We still have I believe it was a foreign film Oscar winner. It might have just been one of the finalists from about 5 years ago. Still hasn't had an American release. If you didn't see one of the 2 screenings at the Seattle International Film Festival, you have to go to another country to go see that film.
So have you seen an evolution in foreign films? Have they become more like American films in the last 20 years, or do they still have your own unique joys to them? I know it's a hard question to ask.
Foreign film is too big a subject to lump all together as foreign film. We've seen the film style of Hong Kong develop and evolve over the years. We saw Dutch film grow, have a very unique style, a school almost of Dutch filmmaking, and then it changed. And the filmmakers who were part of that school left, many of them to become Hollywood filmmakers. The same is true for the films in many other countries, and things do change over time. In Europe, over the last several years, we've seen the rise of pan-European funding, where there is funding available to filmmakers if they co-produce a film in a number of different European countries. And that's changed the nature of European filmmaking, in particular, the last several years.
Or I guess Australian films, I was told. Have you seen a change in that?
Well, there has been a change. I have not personally noticed a real commercial Australian style in recent years, which isn't to say that there isn't one. It may well be out there. If I see 2 or 3 Australian films a year, it doesn't make me a very good judge of Australian film. But many years ago, there was a distinct Australian style, which was done with major Australian stars, an Australian cast and crew, and Australian money. And now we've seen a number of those stars become international stars. We've seen international funding of quote-unquote Australian film. and we don't have the same Australian film product that we had many years ago. There was an Australian commercial film made about 6 or 7 years ago, which showed at the festival, on that subject, and talking about how bad Australian film had become with the invasion of international money and international control, trying to make American-style movies all over the globe.
So have you gone to any of those big parties, opening parties? Anything happen at those at those openings that I should know about?
The opening night parties are fun. The film, you have other opportunities to see. If you're going to the opening night party, you're not going because you want to see the film. You're going because it's a kickoff to the festival. You may or may not have been going to press screenings for the last couple of weeks, but the public screenings kick off with the opening night parties. You have the film, everyone's dressed up. It's a great party just to be there and see friends you haven't seen for a year and get revved up for the next 3 weeks.
Remember any incidents at any parties you can come to mind that you can share, or stuff that you don't want to share?
Oh, there have been wild and crazy parties, but nothing that you wouldn't have somewhere else.
Anything else you want to say? Well, the other thing I was going to ask him about, have you got met any stars, any directors or actors, or had any interesting conversations with them?
Oh, there have been a number of people over the years. I've forgotten most of them, and one of the interesting things as you go back through Steve's books is a lot of times you'll know, well, so-and-so is a filmmaker in this picture, but you haven't the foggiest who they are or what movie they made. There have been great people from all over the world through at different times. Jan de Bont and Paul Verhoeven, among the Dutch filmmakers. In front of the camera, Monique van de Ven was a lot of fun. I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay. I guess one thing they're bringing about silent films, or have you seen any of the silent films at the festival with the music? Any favorites?
There have been great ones. I mentioned the 10th International Film Festival with the 6-film series of the films of Erich von Stroheim. There have been wonderful presentations of Murnau's Sunrise. There have been several things in the Secret Film Festival, so we can't talk about those. And there has been wonderful live accompaniment on piano, which Joel Salzman has performed for the festival for more than a decade. He's probably approaching 2 decades of doing piano accompaniment to silent films that he's never seen before. He sees them on the screen at the same time that he's playing for them. He does a wonderful job. There have been some special presentations, though, with the Alloy Orchestra, with the Black Cat Orchestra, with theater organs, both at the Neptune Theater before its last renovation. There was a wonderful presentation there of Chang, I believe it was, which was just tremendous, with the amazing effects in that original theater organ there. And there was a fundraiser for the film festival many years ago at the Paramount Theater, again prior to its renovation, with a fresh print of Wings and Gaylord Hauser at the keyboard. Gaylord Hauser had played that same theater organ before. Of course, it had been 50 years since he had been at the Paramount Theater playing that organ, but that was a wonderful opportunity to hear some very good silent film accompaniment along with a great silent film on a huge screen. The sort of screen that it was intended for originally. The Paramount was built by Adolf Zukor and the Paramount Publics Film Corporation back in 1923. It was the source at the time of some labor disputes and some disputes with some rival filmmakers who tried to spread the rumor that the balcony was poorly built with substandard concrete and was going to collapse when they had an audience in there. Adolf Zukor wasn't going to have any of it. He drove cement trucks up the ramp onto the balcony and had the cement trucks with all of their weight on the balcony to prove to the public that the theater was safe. And it's still a great venue now, 74 years later.
So you talk about the Secret Festival without mentioning any of the films, any stories in the Secret Festival?
Yeah, sure. One of the great things at the Secret Festival over the years have been the things that haven't happened. Sometimes one film is supposed to be arriving and doesn't show, and then you never know what you might get. You never know what you might get. There have also been occasions where some really bad film came up on screen. I mean, really bad stuff. Nobody wanted to watch. Only to have the house lights come up and to have Rajiv come out and say, "You saw that? If you talk about the movies we show, that's what you're going to see." And just basically threaten everybody. You know, it's a privilege to see these things. You can't see them anywhere else. If you talk about them, the festival can get in trouble, and it's important to keep the confidentiality. There have been wonderful things which have been tied up in litigation where the rights to show a particular film were unclear, and there are no prints in circulation for people to see. Things have not been released on video. There have been films which purportedly did not exist, and it's great to see a film that doesn't exist. There have been some amazing sneak previews of major releases which made the reputation of now world-renowned filmmakers. There have been wonderful guest appearances. William K. Everson, the NYU film prof, who passed away here this last spring, who brought and commented on many of the Stroheim films, has brought some wonderful treasures through the years from his personal collection. Bill Everson is one of the best friends this film festival ever had. And of course, he was one of the founders of Telluride.
So if you ran the Seattle Film Festival, how would you change it? It's like if I ran the zoo or something.
If I ran the Seattle International Film Festival, I'd recruit Daryl McDonald to run it so I could quit. If you go to the film festival, one of the things you'll notice is that you don't usually see the people who work for the festival in the audience. They're too busy. They're too busy putting on the party to be able to enjoy it. And the greatest thing about the Seattle International Film Festival is being able to be in the audience and to be there for as many films as you can, whether that's 20, 40, or 120.
Anything else you want to say?
Not offhand. We can come back and
Yeah, you did a
do
good
more.
job. Yeah, you did a good job, Paul. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So who's next one?
Transformers are always large RF emitters.
So you can start talking whenever you want to talk top of your head about, you know.
Movie? What's
Yeah.
a movie? I've never been to a movie. I thought those were rooms we went to sleep in. I don't know. My name is Steve Smith. I am on camera. I'm not used to being on camera. That's okay.
So how'd you become a movie-holic of seeing all those foreign films at the Seattle Film Festival?
Well, I don't like just foreign films. I like American films too. And I like the old silent movies. I've liked movies since I was a kid. I've always gone to movies. Always enjoyed movies. I'll go to anything. I believe the best way to see anything is to go to it. If you don't go to it, you haven't seen it, right? So to me, going to movies is just a lot of fun. I enjoy it quite a bit. And as far as foreign films versus American films, my feeling is if you go to everything, you'll get to see things. If you don't go to anything, you don't see anything. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. Let me think of a better way of phrasing it. Lots of people go see things they'll think they'll like. So they only see things that they think they'll like, and then they